When it comes to making a celebratory meal for a crowd around the holidays, I always resort to the same menu, which is roast tenderloin with a spice rub, an herbed vinaigrette sauce, some easy potatoes, a really interesting salad with endive and some chopped dates, topped off with a chocolate pot de crème, but I put a little homemade dulce de leche on top and some bourbon whipped cream for the adults. You have to get started with the pot de crème, which is kind of nice because you can get it out of the way up to 3 days ahead of time. Now, it starts with a lot of chocolate, and the type of chocolate you use makes a difference here. I have Ghirardelli 60% chocolate, comes in a bar form, chopped it myself. You can use other brands, but it has to be 60% cacao. That is the perfect ratio for the other ingredients we're using. Now, it's a simple custard that we're gonna make and pour over the chocolate to melt. It's gonna start with 5 large yolks, 5 tablespoons of sugar, and a little bit of salt, 1/4 teaspoon. Now you just wanna whisk this together. Get rid of any lumps of sugar, then you can start adding the liquids. This is 1½ cups of heavy cream. There we go. And 3/4 cup of half and half. And that's the right ratio so that it's nice and rich, but not overly heavy. Now we're just gonna move to the stove top, and we're gonna cook this over medium-low heat until it thickens slightly and it registers between 175 and 180 degrees. That takes about 10 minutes. You want to keep stirring while you cook this so that the eggs on the bottom don't cook and scramble. You can see how it's starting to steam. There you have it. It registers 175 on the thermometer. That's how you know you're good to go. Back over to the chocolate. We're gonna pour the hot mixture right over the chocolate, but through a fine mesh strainer. It's just insurance that in case any of those yolks got cooked, they won't get into the final pot de crème. Now the beauty of this recipe is we're just gonna let this sit for 5 minutes. The heat from the custard would gently melt the chocolate. We'll add a little vanilla and that's it. All right, it's been 5 minutes so that chocolate's good and melted. Just enough time left for me to dissolve some instant espresso powder, which we're gonna add to really bolster the flavor of the chocolate. And you see this a lot in chocolate desserts. You don't necessarily taste the coffee, it just is a stronger chocolate flavor. So 1/2 teaspoon of instant espresso powder. I'm just gonna dissolve it into a tablespoon of water. And actually, I'm gonna add the vanilla right to this mixture because it's all gonna go in at the same time. What about a tablespoon of vanilla? There we go. All right, set that aside. Now time to whisk this together. This is the fun part. The chocolate is perfectly melted. This dessert is just so easy. All right, that looks nice and melted. In goes the vanilla and the instant espresso. Now to make pouring into the ramekins easier, I'm gonna transfer everything into a liquid measuring cup. Here we go. All right, those look great. Now just can clean up the rims a little bit. Now's a good time to do that before it sets. Now before we put them in the refrigerator to chill, you wanna wrap them a few times on the counter, gently, because you want any air bubbles to come to the surface. That way you get a nice, smooth textured pot de crème. Once you've tapped all the air bubbles out, you want to let them cool to room temperature, then cover with plastic wrap and chill until nice and firm before topping with the dulce de leche. The pot de crème are nicely chilled and it's time to add the dulce de leche, which I've made my own. My favorite way to make it is using sous vide because it's really hands-off. First, you need a 16-ounce mason jar. To that, you're gonna add a can of sweetened condensed milk, the seeds from 1 vanilla pod, and a 1/4 teaspoon of table salt. Whisk that together, add a nice clean lid, tighten it, but don't over tighten it, and submerge it in a water bath with the sous vide set to 185 degrees. Now you might need to put something on top of the jar to keep it weighted down so it's fully submerged. And I like to wrap the top of the container with plastic wrap just to help prevent any of that water from evaporating away. And it takes anywhere from 12 to 16 hours to make a perfect dulce de leche. All right, so let me just get it out of the water. I put a little ramekin on top just to keep it submerged. Oh. Proof is in the pudding, right? Oh. You just want to whisk it together, loosen it up a little bit. Make it nice and smooth and a little more pourable, because we're gonna pour about 2 tablespoons of this dulce de leche right over the top. Oh. Once you start making this, you're gonna find it becomes a staple in your fridge because it just makes everything taste good. Put a little in your coffee, put a little over your ice cream at night. All right, again, about 2 tablespoons. I'm just gonna pour it right on top. If you do it while it's warm, you can kind of jiggle it around and make a nice sort of mirror smooth finish. If it's a little cooled, it'll just have some spoon marks, and that's okay. And I love that you can see the vanilla beans. Can't get that at the store. You can tell as the dulce de leche cools down, it doesn't want to spread as readily. Tapping it to get it in place helps. Last one here. There we go. And you can see why you need the pot de crème to be nice and set before you do this, or else it'll just mix in, which would probably taste delicious, but I like having the 2 distinct layers. That's it for the dulce de leche layer. Now we're just gonna cover again with plastic wrap and really let these chill until the dulce de leche is set. But again, you could do this days ahead of time, which is why I love this dessert. These are ready for the fridge. I'm gonna make room by getting that tenderloin out. Oh, look at this beauty. This needs a little advanced prep too. So these go in, that comes out of the fridge. Look at this Mama Jama, isn't she gorgeous? This is my favorite cut of meat for a holiday because everybody loves it. Tastes great the next day. And you really get a variety of donenesses if you roast it. Some it's a little more well done on the ends and a little more rare in the middle, which is perfect for a crowd. So this one weighs about 4 or 5 pounds, nicely trimmed by the butcher. If you trim it yourself, you want to get one that's a bit bigger, more like 7.5 pounds. You just want to pat it dry with paper towels. And now we're going to tie it nice and evenly. That just helps it roast evenly. So you want to tie it about 1-inch intervals. And I like starting in the middle and working my way out. That's how you get a nice even roast, which is the whole point of tying. Now, I know buying a cut of meat this expensive is intimidating, mostly because you don't want to mess it up, and I've been there. But this method is really hands-off. We're going to cook it low and slow, so there's ample time to pull it out of the oven at just the right temperature. And I eliminated that fussy step that most recipes have of searing it, because it's a long piece of meat. It's hard to get a nice even sear. So although it's expensive, it is very convenient and pretty foolproof. All right, one more down here. You can see this little tail bit. It's a little thinner than the other, so you want to tuck it under so it's about the same thickness as the thickest part. It'll cook at the same rate. She's a beauty. Just gonna snip off any of this extra twine. Put a sheet of plastic wrap down. And because we're doing this a day ahead, it's convenient and gives you time to salt the meat. The salting of the meat, it makes the meat more seasoned, obviously, but it also helps ensure that the meat stays good and juicy during cooking. Tablespoon of kosher salt. That has a bigger crystal size that works better for this. And then just take the plastic wrap, roll it up around the roast. And you want to do this about 24 hours ahead of cooking. And then you're done with a lot of prep the day before cooking, so that when it comes to cooking, it comes together in a snap. Into the fridge this goes.
Are you ready to take your cooking to the next level?
Introducing the complete America's Test Kitchen TV show cookbook.
Featuring every recipe from every episode of America's Test Kitchen. That's thousands of recipes.
That texture is unbelievable.
Reviews.
Gadgets you didn't know you needed.
And tips.
Yes, there's some terrible choices, but there are also some amazing choices.
We've spilled all of our secrets and included our insider notes alongside each recipe.
Plus, there's a handy shopping guide, so you know exactly what to grab when you're at the store.
And of course, it makes an excellent gift. Get your copy today at americastestkitchen.com.
Now it's time to really get cooking. We're about to put the tenderloin in the oven, but first I'm gonna make a spice rub. And I do this because it eliminates the need for searing the meat. It adds a lovely coating and a ton of flavor. Now I developed this spice rub to sort of mimic the flavors of harissa. So the tenderloin has a milder flavor. This gives it a little punch. Easy enough to make. Start with 2 tablespoons of paprika, a tablespoon Aleppo pepper. It has sort of a peppery, fruity flavor. Tablespoon of ground coriander, teaspoon each garlic powder and cumin, ground cumin, and some whole caraway seeds. Not a lot, just about 3/4 teaspoon. All right, mix this together. And it's just a really beautiful color and adds a ton of flavor. All right, now for the beef. Here is this beauty. Again, it's rested overnight so that it's really well seasoned. You can see the color of the meat changes ever so slightly. We're gonna add the spice rub, and to help the spice rub stick to the meat, I'm gonna paint it with a little honey. Adds a little flavor as well. It's 3 tablespoons of honey, and I warmed this quickly in the microwave. You want it to go on nice and easily. Just gonna paint it all over the top and sides. No need to paint the bottom. It's gonna be on the bottom and it would kind of get soggy. All those spices wouldn't stay nice and crisp. The combination of that little earthy sweetness of the honey with the spices, such a good combo. All right, now for the spice rub. We're gonna use all of it. You can notice I'm doing it on this rim baking sheet. That just helps contain the mess. You wanna pack it on, roll it around a bit. Make sure the top and sides are all nicely coated. There we go. Oh, that's beautiful. This is a job for your hands. Don't even try to do this with a spatula. Your hands are the best tool for this. Now, to cook it, we're gonna use a wire rack, and I've lined the pan with foil and I sprayed the wire rack with some vegetable oil spray. That just helps prevent it from sticking. Makes cleanup a bit easier too. Onto the wire rack it goes. Notice I've been doing them sort of corner to corner. That's because tenderloins can be a bit long and you really want it to fit on the sheet pan. All right, I'm gonna wash my hands. All right, so the tenderloin's almost ready for the oven. One last trick, I'm gonna spray it with some vegetable oil spray. And that's just gonna help those spices really bloom because a lot of them are oil soluble. And the spray just makes it really easy to not brush them off. All right, this is ready for the oven. Low and slow is the name of the game here. 250 degrees, which is good because it cooks the roast really evenly, but it also gives you a lot of time to nail the doneness. Now, medium rare, you wanna roast it to 115. If you want it more medium, you go all the way to 125. So into the oven this goes. Now, while that cooks, you have a good hour and a half to get the rest of the meal ready, including the sauce for the roast. It's just a relish or a vinaigrette using fresh mint and fresh cilantro. You want about a cup of fresh cilantro. I use the stems because I love their sweeter flavor. Obviously, I trimmed and washed this already. You can just chop it up. All right, into a mixing bowl this goes. So this is fresh mint. It is gorgeous. You want about half a cup, thereabouts. I'm not using the stems of the mint. They taste a bit bitter. All right, into the bowl it goes. Next up, some scallions, about 4 of them. Slice the dark green parts nice and thinly. For the whites, if they're a little on the big side, I like cutting them in half lengthwise first, just to make them a little smaller. And slice thinly again. All right, into the bowl it goes. Next up, some garlic, 3 cloves. I'm gonna use a rasp grater. Just get it into the bowl. The rasp grater makes it such a nice fine puree, perfect for sauces. Some lemon juice. I washed these lemons already, and I'm just giving them a little roll on the counter just to break open some of the insides, get that juice flowing. You want about 2 tablespoons. 1, 2. A little extra for good luck. There we go. And a little bit of salt. Last, a little bit of olive oil. Well, not a little bit, half a cup. You want the good stuff here, extra virgin because it's going in the sauce. You're gonna taste it raw, so the flavor matters. That is all it takes to make this delicious relish. Into a serving bowl it goes. That's it for the sauce. Set that aside, and we still have plenty of time while that roast is in the oven to prep everything else we need for the dinner, including the salad dressing. Now, this salad dressing I developed specifically to go with this menu because it has dates, and the dates with the mint and the cilantro and that spice rub all taste delicious together. So 3/4 of a cup chopped dates. We're gonna add some cider vinegar, about 1/3 of a cup of cider vinegar, 1/3 of a cup of olive oil. Get this mixed in out of the way. That's it for the salad dressing, nice and simple. Moving on to the rest of the salad ingredients that we can prep at this point, which is pretty much most of them. Have 2 oranges. I love having fresh fruit in a salad. It just seems special. I'm gonna peel these oranges using a knife. Look how thick that rind is. This would make good marmalade. That's what these oranges would be good for. Just gonna use my knife to cut away the pith and the rind. The orange is like tiny inside this huge pith. All right, let's trim this up. You wanna cut off any little bits of pith. For salad, I like to do something a little different. I like the oranges to really hang together. So I'm gonna cut each orange in quarters. This allows you also to take out that center bit if it's a little hardy looking. You don't wanna eat that. And then I'm just gonna slice crosswise into nice pieces that are easy to eat, but they also hold together in the salad. Set aside for the salad for later. That got pretty juicy. And now we're gonna cut some endive. We just want a little. I think it adds a nice crunch, it adds good color, a little bitterness. The recipe calls for 2 endive, but look how tiny these are. This is the smallest endive I've ever seen. And I know how this happened because people didn't buy it at the market, and it's the outer leaves that get brown. So in the produce department, they peel off the outer leaves, trim the bottom, and you wind up with small ones. So I'm gonna use a few more than 2 just to make sure I have enough. And actually, I don't mind that it's the centers. I think the centers are more tender and a little more sweet, so works for me. All right, gonna cut off the stems. Then I'm just gonna slice crosswise. You want big enough pieces so you can get it with a fork, but small enough so that it mixes well with all the other lettuces that we're gonna add. Now you wanna pick out any of those hard round core pieces. Should be a few. Into a salad spinner these go, because I did rinse them before I cut them, because you don't want to get your cutting board dirty. But if you rinse them afterwards, you get all the dirt that's in between the layers out. Also, doing this ahead, endive can brown, so this is my make ahead trick. You rinse them and then you leave them covered with cold water until just before you make the salad. Keeps them nice and fresh. Now another good make ahead tip is for the potatoes. I'm gonna get the potatoes on the stove. I'm not gonna start cooking them. I'm just gonna get them in their pot with their water, so at the right time, right when the tenderloin just comes out of the oven, I can put the potatoes on. So it's 3 pounds of small potatoes. I found these at the store. I love them. It's 2 colors, the red and the white. It's the size I like most. Both red and white work well here, but the size is perfect. Just gonna add a teaspoon of table salt to this pot of potatoes. Gonna cover them with water. You wanna cover them by a good inch of cold water. I'm gonna set it on the stove until it's time to cook.
Love our in-depth reviews? Get the latest from our reviews team delivered straight to your inbox. Our well-equipped cook newsletter provides top product picks, no-nonsense buying guides, and must-try recipes. No extra fluff, just the smartest ways to shop, save, and cook. Sign up for free now at americastestkitchen.com/newsletter.
That roast has been in there for an hour and a half. My good friend's here to let me know that it is probably perfectly done, huh, Ziggs? Yeah, his nose is always right on. Looking for 115 thereabouts. Perfect. Now it's a little under what we'd want for medium rare, but that's perfect because now I'm gonna put it under the broiler and help this crust get nice and dried out and crisp. 5 or 10 minutes, and the final temperature of the roast for medium rare should be between 120 and 125. All right, while that tenderloin's in the oven, it's the perfect time to start the potatoes. They've been waiting patiently on the stove. Now remember, they're covered with cold water. What we want to do is bring that water up to a boil, then maintain a gentle boil, 10-15 minutes until they're tender. That tenderloin's been under the broiler. It is gorgeous. You can see the spices on top, dried out a little bit, got a little burnished. That's what you're looking for. So this needs to rest for 20 minutes, during which time I'm gonna remove all the twine so it's easier to carve. While the potatoes are nice and hot, we're gonna add some butter, 6 tablespoons of unsalted butter. And as it melts, we'll add a little bit of lemon zest. You know, it just kind of elevates the potatoes, makes them taste a little special. You want about a teaspoon of lemon zest, which is about 1 lemon. All right, and we're gonna add some fresh chives, 1/4 cup of freshly chopped chives, and a little salt and pepper. A little crunchy salt on the outside is nice. And a little pepper. You just wanna give them a good stir. You wanna be gentle at this point because the potatoes are cooked and they will start to break apart. I like to try to leave as many whole as possible. You can also just take the pot up, give it a good roly-poly. Into that warm serving bowl they go. Oh, it's the bottom of the pot, right? It's all that good stuff. It smells good, doesn't it, Ziggs? It's that little bit of lemon. It's just unexpected. I know, buddy. He's telling me that this roast is perfectly cooked, and I know it is. This roast has been resting for 20 minutes, so it's ready to slice. Let me show you how gorgeous this is on the inside. Look at that. Perfect. Look how beautifully even that roast is. And of course, it gets more red as it sits after you slice it. And of course, the ends are just a little more well done, which is perfect, especially for a crowd. Transfer this to the platter. Oh, that is gorgeous. Last but definitely not least is the salad. Here I have 10 ounces of greens. I like using a mix of arugula and baby spinach, but at the store, they had a mix of those two plus baby chard, which I think is gorgeous. So using that, about 10 ounces plus the endive, plenty for a table of 8 people. Here's the dressing I made earlier. Give it a quick stir, and then just drizzle it over. Those are all those dates, and the dates get especially soft because they've been sitting in that vinaigrette. They give the vinaigrette body and a little sweetness. Not a lot of dressing, just enough to get everything a nice light coat, not over-seasoned by any stretch. So you can plate this salad on individual plates and serve it as the first course. And if you did that, garnish each plate. But if you're gonna serve it in a nice big bowl, just take the oranges, sprinkle them right over the top. Any juice that's in the bottom just adds to the dressing. Top it off with some toasted sliced almonds. And because it's a holiday meal, I pulled out my special china. This is my wedding china, my mother's wedding china, and then these napkins were gifted to me by someone I used to work with. They were her mother's, and she had a ton of linens, and she knew I would use them on special occasions. So I like pulling out all the old plates and platters and napkins, especially on holidays. Let's make a quick little tasting plate. Perfect. You can see how it gets a little more red and rosy after you slice it. A little bit of sauce. A few potatoes. Might as well go for the buttery ones right on the top in the middle. Oh, that's 4 potatoes. Should always go for 5 because it's an odd number, and odd numbers are prettier, so my mother told me. And just a little salad, and I'm just gonna put it right on my tasting plate here. Nice glass of gigondas. I know it's not a wine fancy enough for a decanter, but decanters just look cool. I'm excited to eat this. First up, a taste of this tenderloin. Oh, cuts like a dream. The spice rub on that tenderloin is delicate, but it just adds a little extra flavor to the mild tasting tenderloin, but doesn't overwhelm it. And you get a little hit of that honey, just a little sweetness, and then topped with the cilantro and the mint. It is just a really, really lovely but easy combination. Just feels elevated a bit. And the boiled potatoes with a little butter. A little bit of lemon zest. It just livens up the potatoes. A little hit of salad. Is with the dates and the baby arugula. They really balance each other out. But as a whole, all the flavors, they're individual. And to follow up this wonderful holiday meal, the creamy, decadent, chocolatey pot de crèmes topped with homemade dulce de leche. Now you can top this with just regular whipped cream if you want, but I made bourbon whipped cream. Not a lot of bourbon, only about a teaspoon of bourbon for a little less than a cup of cream, a couple teaspoons of sugar, because a lot of sugar and flavor is in the pot de crème itself. But that little hit of bourbon in the end is really nice. All right, you don't have to do this either, but it's fun. Take a bar of chocolate. This is the same bittersweet chocolate that I used to make the pot de crèmes. Just use a microplane zest. Just grate a little chocolate over top. I like garnishes like this because they're easy and they really they elevate things just ever so slightly, especially on a holiday meal. All right. Oh, I love this dessert. It is the perfect balance. You have the chocolate, it's smooth and creamy. The Dulce de Leche is that almost slightly burnt caramel with the vanilla beans, and that little hit of bourbon. Perfect ending to a holiday meal. See you next time. If you're ready to take your cooking to the next level, head over to americastestkitchen.com and get a free trial of our ATK Essential membership. While you're there, you can sign up for our free email newsletters and download our app. So, what are you waiting for?